to day, I think this is day 15, Martin? Day 14? Who knows? Day 14 of our Recession Rebellion webinars. And as always with Recession Rebellion, we are here to try and give you something useful, informative and entertaining with which to start your day, in the hope that in doing that, we're being helpful and we're helping to kind of, galvanize you and the people around you in some really meaningful action at what is obviously for many of us quite a difficult time. So just by way of introduction, I'm Phil. I run a business called Corporate Punk. We help to make other businesses more innovative, responsive and resilient. And Martin, my co-host, do you want to say a quick hello?
I do. Hello, everybody. My name is Martin Lucas. I run a business called Gap in the Matrix. So we help businesses stop doing stupid stuff, which is what my subject is going to be tomorrow. I'm actually going to be talking about the psychology of engagement. So it should tag team quite well with what Julie's going to talk about today. That's about all you'll hear from me today, apart from some questions.
Thank you, Martin. Martin and I have worked together since we started doing something called Founders Live last year, and if you heard our preamble about me psychologically torturing him, you'll know that's very true. But it's a joy to work with him every day, and it's a really good fun partnering doing this Recession Rebellion work together as well. We are joined also today, we are actually genuinely in the presence of greatness. So we have with us our guest speaker for today, who is somebody I've had the privilege of working with on and off for actually the better part of a decade now. So Julie Screech is a data expert. She's worked with some of the world's leading organizations on data strategy. And curiously, she's also a hypnotherapist. And what she's going to talk to us about today, without giving the game away, is quite interesting. How do you bring those two worlds together? And it felt like she was running me through the talk a couple of days ago. I was really excited because I was like, this kind of slightly more lateral thinking is exactly what we need at times like this. So we're going to be in Julie's hands for the next sort of 15 minutes or so, and then we'll take some questions at the end. Jules, I shall stop sharing my screen so you can share yours. Over to you.
Marvellous. Thank you, Phil. There we go. Oh, there we are. So thanks, Phil. It's always quite scary when someone gives you such a big intro, but thank you for that. Yeah, it's really interesting. These two kind of seemingly different worlds of, people's behaviour and their psychology and data. And both of these two worlds fascinate me for completely different reasons. And so I'm going to try and condense, what's been going on in my head for about the last 30 years into 15 minutes. So wish me luck. So thanks for joining us today. In truth, hang on a second. If I can get my slides to move. Come on, there they are. So in truth, we're all in business to make money, and the way that we make money is by either solving customers' problems or meeting their needs in some way, shape, or form. There are some, unarguable building blocks to what we call customer value or the customer value chain. So obviously we've got the customers themselves, that we've either got or that we want to get hold of, the value that we're providing through our products, so our problem solving products, services and so on. We've got the channels that we use to deliver and communicate that value, the different sorts of relationships that we build with different customers, and then the revenue, the money that people are prepared to pay us for delivering that value, whatever that might be to them. We've also then got some operational side to the business. So we've got key resources that we need to create and deliver that value, key activities, things that we need to do to create and deliver that value. We've also got key partners, both within and without, outside the organisation, that will help us create and deliver that value, and then also the cost of doing business. And these are the key building blocks to any business. So that's great. actually, it's always very useful to have a framework or some way of organising all of those different building blocks so that you're able to work out what's going on in your organisation. And business model canvases are a really good way of helping you organise your business. So as you'll see, all those 9 blocks are mapped on there. The left-hand side of the canvas is pretty much dealing with the operational and cost side of the business, and the right-hand side is pretty much dealing with customer management. And then obviously at the bottom, you know, your revenue minus your costs, that's your profit. That's what we're all here for. So it's really useful for organisations to have tools and frameworks that allow them to analyse what's going on, to look at what's happening in their business. But usually what happens is, as a business, we do this as an internal process, and we actually do this as a left to right kind of exercise, worrying about the setup and the structure of our organisation first. But in these times, really, we need to be kind of looking outside in and adopting a more sort of right to left style of thinking. So we should be thinking about our customers and our relationships first. We should be thinking about retention and thinking about loyalty. And, you know, all of this should be really done on what customers really genuinely think. Not what we think they think, sitting from the comfort of our, you know, our own homes or our sheds or wherever we might be working from at the moment. It's really important to spend the time analysing for points of pain in that customer value journey for your customers, where the friction is, to also look for differentiated and, you know, and disruptive solutions to that. And to really kind of look at ways of answering, you know, can I do more with less? How do I stop at points of erosion for customers? And can I add more value without eating into my profit margins? So the reason as well that I say disruptive, and I think this is quite an important point, is that the most significant and exponential growth in organisations is coming from disruptive organisations. And I've got some data here. I can't get 2 slides in without any data. Basically, according to research done by the Babson School of Business, they are basically saying that within 5 years, 40% of the top companies will no longer exist. And even more staggeringly, 75% of the S&P top 500 companies in the next 5 years will be companies that we haven't heard of yet. And the majority of those will be disruptive organisations. Now, we're all familiar with disruptive organisations like Uber and Airbnb, but also we've got the emergence of other types of disruption where people are actually changing the business model itself, the structure of the business model. So Klarna, for example, and other organisations that we're more familiar with, like Costco, who in reality make the majority of their money through membership, not through what they sell, and people like Shop Direct, who for all intents and purposes actually are a finance company, not a retail organisation. So what do we really mean when we talk about inside out versus outside in? Well, inside out, it's the place we're normally in. It's the left-hand side. So we know our customers. We've learned what they want. We know what they need. We know how to meet those needs. We've got experience. We've got proof. We know what we're doing with the ones that we've got, and we spend a lot of time and energy in acquiring new ones to kind of build our base. And that's great, because all we have to do is keep applying and reapplying that with some smart thinking. But in these current times, it's not enough just to rely on that previously learnt and understood knowledge, because we're sailing in uncharted waters. You know, we don't know what customers think at the moment. We haven't got any learning. We haven't got any experience. We haven't got any proof of what's going on in customers' heads, and therefore what value means to them right now, and what value will mean to them sort of moving forward. So it's quite important that we ask those customers and we find out directly from them exactly what it is that's going on in their world. Now, I know it's really tempting to go into a tactical, operational, shutdown, short-term reaction to the current situation. But the majority of organisations that are delivering sustained growth are those organisations that discipline themselves, even in these times, to think very mid and long term. So if you think, for example, about McDonald's, they're quite disruptive. They changed the whole burger business model back in the 50s and 60s, and continue to innovate and continue to wipe out friction and points of pain in their customer service, again and again and again. Bezos is quite interesting. If you look at him, since 1997, in a letter to his shareholders, he's actually been talking about, it's about literally just a dogged focus on your customers and what your customers want. He's all about delivering compelling customer value. That's his raison d'etre. And he's been talking about long-term investment in customers. His question that he always asks is, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? And then he invests in making that the thing that he focuses on. And interestingly enough, he's someone who's, I think, $24 billion better off since COVID started. And it's really interesting because if he hadn't actually wrapped himself around the customers for the last 23 years in the way that he had, he wouldn't be in a situation where he'd be set up to do that. He'd still just be somebody selling books online. So if we're sort of thinking about, okay, so it's got to be about customer need, it's got to be about understanding customer need and really getting underneath the skin of what that means for my customers. And I thought to myself, who's got a mastery of understanding what customer needs are, what someone's need state is? And I thought, aha, therapists, they do. They understand that really, really well. And as a hypnotherapist, I've got a lot of tools up my sleeve that actually help me really get, with quite a laser-like focus, really get underneath the skin of what someone's need state is. I need to understand that because I can't walk with them on a path to wellness unless I understand where they're starting. So feel free to look this up. There's loads of stuff around human needs and human givens. And there are some basic human needs that we all have. Obviously, our customers on the whole tend to be humans, so it's applicable to customers. Air, water, sleep, food, they're very obvious. We all need those. But in addition to those, there's 9 others, which you may or may not be quite so familiar with. So you can see the list there on the right. It's about giving and receiving attention. It's about status. It's about creativity and stimulation. And these 9 needs are things that we will consciously and subconsciously as humans be trying to get met all the time. Whether you know it consciously or not, we are all striving. Everything on this sheet is our raison d'etre to get all these needs met. We'll get them met by any means. Those could be positive or negative. There are some foundations for addiction in some of these. Interestingly enough, I only realised how many of these I got met through work when I went through the process that we're just about to go through. And also, very interesting, it's not for no reason that many of the interrogation and torture techniques around the planet actually are wrapped around either the deprivation or the manipulation of combinations of the 9 things on this sheet. So, okay, you might say, how do we use these then to actually begin to understand what somebody's need state is? So it's a very simple process as a hypnotherapist. And to actually work out what someone's need state is and really what their state of resilience is I go through a process where for each of these 9 points, we actually go through a process of saying, right, this is what this really means. How would you score yourself out of 10 against each of these factors? So let's say, for example, the giving and receiving of attention. Do you have lots of conversations with people? Do you feel like people listen to you? There's a lot that you can unpick really where you are and then give an honest score out of 10. And then you do the same thing around each of the points. I should imagine most people are feeling fairly low on control right now, maybe on safety and security. But you go around and you get each of those scores, and then you plot them on a spidergram pretty much like this. And what this will do is this is your map of your personal resilience. And this gives you a really good indication of that person's need state. Now, I've got to say, this person example here is in really bad trouble, purely and simply because resilience starts to crumble. Your instability starts to rear its head if you're at 8 or less on 2 or more of the spikes. So as you can see, this person here, if it was a real person, would be in really big trouble. Incidentally, if anyone's interested in diving into this in more depth, I'm more than happy to take that up with you guys through Phil and Martin. So that's great, but how can we adopt this and use this as a business tool? So I started having to think about how this related to the business world. And what I wanted to do was to literally just take you through some thoughts about how would it be if we did this process with our customers. What would we really be talking to them about in each of these sort of 9 areas? So for attention, for example, that could be, it's about engagement and interaction, but it could be about customer comms. It could be about offers and promotions. It could be about how you engage with them online, obviously not in store at the moment, but that will be coming back again, at some point. The forums and blogs, opinions, ratings, recommendations and reviews, what is it that they want from you? And more importantly, how do you make that experience for them interactive? Because it's about it being two-way attention. How do you show them that you are listening and responding and reacting to what it is that they're telling you? So, I would say ask them, listen to what they've got to say to you, your customers, and then respond. Decide as an organization how you're going to respond. Control, this could be about having 24-hour access to your organization, could be about having a human on the end of the phone. It could be about having a preference center or enabling them to customize or personalize or have their own suite of choices and options where they feel like it's theirs, that they've made for them. And again, it's about asking them, listening to what they say and responding as an organization to that. Meaning and purpose. I think particularly at the moment, this is about making sure your organization stands for a clear set of values that you not only have written on the walls of your organization, but that pervades everything that you do. It's how you treat your employees and how you treat your customers at the moment actually is going to really genuinely say more about your values, I think, than anything else is going to in the previous handful of years and for the next handful of years. And interestingly enough, I'm sure you've all seen online, all of the organizations that people are calling to boycott, after lockdown, purely and simply because of their shocking and appalling behaviour, which have demonstrated a value set that I'm sure none of us would want to be associated with. And likewise, I don't know if anyone's seen the information about Timpsons and what they're doing, how they're treating their employees and their customers. If you haven't seen it, go and take a look. Amazing. And they're not a big organisation, so it can be done. Again, ask your customers what are they needing to see from you? What values is it important for you to demonstrate to them at the moment? Listen to that and then respond as an organisation. You'll see that's a fairly familiar pattern through each of these 9. Safety and security is really important, and I think the obvious one here is data security, privacy, GDPR, all the stuff that we've all been very conscious of for the last sort of 18-24 months. But I think it's also about integrity and trust. And interestingly enough, my other half buys clothes from an organisation that sells quite expensive clothes, and he'd invested in a £170 jumper. And a few weeks later, another jumper turned up. So he rang them and said, I think you've accidentally sent me another jumper. And they went, no. And we had a few complaints about the first style of jumper. So we've redesigned it, gone to a new supplier, and everyone who ordered the original one, we sent a new one. In terms of actually feeling like that's an organisation that's on your side that you can trust, very tough to beat. Intimacy, again, it's what does that mean? How do you deliver relevancy and belonging, to your customers? And funnily enough, example from the same company, It's an organisation that's set up by lots of ex-SAS guys who decided to go into high class endurable clothing when they came out of military service, and they carry that through in everything that they do, right down to the point where you don't sign up for a newsletter, you join the brotherhood. Great, fantastic. How's that play out in your organisation? How do you deliver that sense of belonging to your customers? What do they want from you right now? Mind-body connection. This is about how you protect your customers. So I think supermarkets at the moment, okay, they got it wrong the first couple of weeks, but they've really stepped up to the plate now with the trolley hygiene and specialist times and traffic flow and barriers and contactless limits changing, and even now packing your own shopping so no one else has to touch it throughout the whole process. Status, it's about exclusivity, it's about recognition. We all talk about VIP, but let me tell you, my nail lady that I go to twice a week, who knows how shockingly bad I am without her help when it comes to my nail hygiene, actually delivered a goodie bag on my door with handwritten instructions as to what I was supposed to do over the lockdown period to keep my nails from turning into a disaster. And she actually put a little Easter egg in and put my name on it and tied it up and put it on my doorstep, and then rang me to say, look outside. I mean, that is VIP treatment. She will be doing my nails until I'm 80 now as a result of that. So how do you embody that same sense of status? You're important to us in your customers. What's that mean for your individual customers? Connection to something bigger. Obviously, the NHS clapping thing is just a prime example of that. But it's one word to me, really. It's community. You've either got to be one, offer one, support one, align to one. You've got to provide that sense of you're part of something by interacting with our brand and being one of our customers. And right now, your CSR policy, whatever that is, your plan has got to be tangible, real, and happening out in the real world. And finally, creativity and stimulation. I'm not sure. There you go. Finally, creativity and stimulation. It could be about co-creation. It could be about surprise and delight. Interestingly enough, IKEA and a number of other people have got this do it for me new segment that's kind of appeared for them, where I don't want to build it myself, you come and do it for me. And John Lewis are now operating an interior decorating service where you can get people to come and hang your wallpaper for you, which is great. But they've gone one stage further. They're sending some of their assistants to theatre school so that they can put on daily events in store to stimulate creative ideas across their customers, which and that's because customers needed to understand how to interact with their brands and their products. So good for them. So essentially, it's a very simple process. Ask your customers, listen, then score them out of 10 and do your own kind of business equivalent of this spidergram and see where you're strong and where you're weak. Respond to that, put a plan in place, focus on those areas where you're less resilient, less strong, monitor what it is that you're doing. As Phil said yesterday, chances are you might not get it completely right the first time. So evolve it over time and keep listening to your customers. What they're thinking now while we're in lockdown is going to evolve as we start to come out of that lockdown situation. And then, 6 months after that, who knows? So I think it's going to be about how you set up that process of asking and listening and responding, and being, and building your corporate resilience with your customers. So if I had some takeouts to leave with you, I guess I would say, review your customer value chain for pain, friction, and differentiated solutions. To be honest with you, if you don't, I'm pretty sure someone else will be, and looking to take advantage of that. Look outwards in, not inwards out, and think longer term about, what's not going to change even post lockdown and in a year's time, and invest in those things. and meet your customer and human needs by asking customers what they need first, and then working out how your business delivers value against that need. And that's pretty much it from me. So back over to Martin and Phil for any questions.
Thank you very much, Jules. Martin, questions, please.
So the first one was, Julie, if you carried out research on, say, 50 users, but there are no clear trends, and there are huge variations between people, is it still useful?
That's a very good question. And what I would say to that is, if you normally carry out research across 50 people and you get no clear trends, then what do? And in a data world, what we then do is we then start differentiating our segments. So what I would then do is I would ask my established, very profitable VIP best customers versus my my middle, could grow, look like they've got headroom but don't customers, and then compare some of the key trends and the key answers between those. I think there are, you know, either that, or what I would do is I would narrow it down to the customers that I am most concerned about and the ones that I'm most concerned about keeping, and keep going and keep asking the right questions until you get to a place where there is either commonality or diversity. Because if you've got clear commonality or clear diversity, you can start to react to that as an organisation, as a business.
Brilliant, Julie. Fantastic. The final question is super useful model. Thank you, Julie. Can you give us a customer story and an example of somebody that you've worked with and the difference that it made?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, interestingly enough, working with it's a very large it's a very large organization that you'll see in most of the airports that you go to get your currency before you go on holiday, and it begins with T. And I actually was working with them, funnily enough, not in a data capacity but in a program manager capacity, to help them to put in their GDPR program a couple of years ago. And when I got there, I discovered that they didn't really have a structure or a plan really for their data or for their people, or really in terms of how they were going to support GDPR through the organisation at all. And I had to do a bit of a cheat, because I had to go through this process myself, doing it kind of inside out for them. And actually look at the areas where, if they didn't do something about those particular areas, they were gonna fall over, and that GDPR would not work for them. So it was about how we gave some attention to the project. It was about how we gave some control to individuals in different teams and departments, like frontline staff, the internal HR department, for example. Obviously, safety and security stands out for itself in that particular instance, but it was also about individuals feeling like they were being safe and being secure with customer data, but also doing the right things in that area. So it's quite an interesting one, because even though I didn't overtly sit down at board level and do this with them, I did it and then use that to help them work out what all the other things were that they needed to stand up in the organisation to make a policy live and breathe and work for them. And I think that's quite an important thing as well. Is like a lot of the time, particularly say for example where we're buying in tech, we focus on getting the tech stood up, but then we're not really cognizant of all the other different sort of factors internally and externally that we're going to have to manage to allow that thing to live and breathe and thrive and deliver the value to the business that we need it to. And I do also think as well that when we're making these big sort of decisions internally around bits of kit or structure or whatever, I do think we need to step outside of that and put ourselves in our customers' shoes and look at what that means for them, and and manage that, communicate about that, and just be aware of really how that interfaces back to our customers. Because if we're not meeting their needs, we're not solving their problems and delivering value to them, they'll walk away. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the different ways that you can kind of use the same framework. You can use it completely internally, inside out, or outside in, or personally, or for a team, or for a whole business, or for just your managers, or whatever you want to do. It's a really sort of flexible process.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic. Phil, do you want to just take us out and just tell us what we've got in line tomorrow and stuff like that?
Well, in line tomorrow, Martin, we have your lovely self, don't we? Talking about
the psychology of engagement. I'm going to be doing a veritable kick in the nuts for Sainsbury's. So if anyone wants to see that, it'll be slightly more positive than what I'm saying. We'll be having some fun with Lego and things as well. But I'll be telling you why brands doing lots of meaning well activity at the moment are actually destroying the essence of what they're doing. So a lot of it is actually in relation to what Julie was talking about today. People don't understand their customers.
So fun with Lego and a kick in the nuts. What more could you want on a Thursday morning? Julie, that was brilliant, as I knew it would be. Thank you very much indeed. A big thank you from everybody on the audience. There's some great feedback here as well. And everybody else, that was Recession Rebellion, day 14. We look forward to seeing you for day 15 tomorrow.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good day.